Good morning and welcome to our cabinet meeting today. Delighted to welcome anybody who's joining online. And just before we start the meeting formally, please can I bring in our Democratic Support Officer Sarah Colwick, who will read us through the housekeeping document.
Thank you. Please note that this meeting of the Cabinet is being recorded by the Council for live broadcast and will be published on the Council website for a minimum of 6 months. Please could everyone present follow these ground rules. Only speak when invited to by the Chairman. If accessing via Teams, always turn on your video function when invited to speak and state your name. Please use your microphones when speaking and please mute or turn off your microphone when you are not talking. If you are accessing via Teams and would like to speak on an item, please indicate your wish to do so by utilising the raise your hand feature in the bar at the top of the Teams window. For those in the room, please note that if the fire alarm sounds, please exit the building by way of the nearest available signed fire exit route and make your way to the ground floor of the multi-storey car park. Finally, please ensure background noise is kept to a minimum and mobile phones and other devices are turned off or switched to silent for the duration of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Okay, so first item on the agenda today is apologies. We do have apologies from Councillor Haynes, and Councillor White is joining virtually. Okay, do we have any declarations of interest? None that I'm seeing. Thank you. We'll move on to agenda item 3, which is a confirmation of minutes, which I'm formally proposing, and I believe Councillor Broadhead, you're seconding. Does anybody have any comments on the minutes as circulated? No, I'm not seeing that. So all those in favour, please show. Thank you. Now we move on to agenda item 4, which is public issues. We have no questions, statements or petitions submitted on this occasion. So that moves us to agenda item 5, recommendations from the Overview and Scrutiny Board. I believe we've got Councillor Bartlett here today. Steve, what I'll do is, as normal, I'll bring you in on the items as they come up, unless you would like to say anything further at this point.
No, thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much. Okay, so then that gets us to the first substantive item, which is agenda item 6, which is the MTFP update report, which I'm formally proposing, and I believe again Councillor Broadhead is seconding. So yes, this is a challenging report in terms of the it highlights both an in-year pressure because we've had some significant investment required, particularly in our children's services, and a slight overspend in our adult services as well. We're in a very challenging time in terms of the back end of a COVID situation. We're seeing a significant amount of pressure in our services, but what we're absolutely committed to is standing up to that and actually investing in our services, particularly in our people areas. We said at the start of our administration this would be a council with people at its heart, and we're putting our money where our mouth is by investing in these services. We do have a strong degree of confidence, both in terms of when we next see this paper, which will be in December, the next quarterly update report, of an improved position. We've done some really good work with members and officers to improve the position, and we're also now getting into the heart of our February budget setting process, and there's a strong degree of confidence there that we are, we'll be able to have a very strong and optimistic budget in February. We obviously await the Chancellor's budget and spending review at lunchtime today, and that will help us again play into moving us forward. So I'm very happy to propose this, and Phil to second.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. As you pointed out, this is a regular report that we take through Cabinet, and is the current state of where we are on the finances. As you've highlighted, we've in year we've had put some initial investment into our children and vulnerable adults, which is absolutely the right thing to do, and I share your confidence. The proof of the pudding will be the eating when we put forward our new budget for next year. Some tremendous amount of work is already underway for that, and I share your confidence that when we come to our new budget early next year, not only will the position significantly improved, but I think we'll have some really positive announcements about the way forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. And then before I open it up to any debate or discussion, can I bring in Councillor Bartlett, who's the Chair of Overview and Scrutiny Committee? Steve.
Yes, thank you, Leader. It's fair to say we had a very robust debate about the MTFP, and there was clearly a division on the approach that should be taken by some members, in that there was a consideration that the council, and actually an accusation that the council were behaving recklessly in the current circumstances. However, this was not supported generally by the committee. There was a challenge to the assumptions being made in the report, particularly in terms of the changing potential for changes in the pay awards, inflation, and in particularly a concern about the deficit that seemed to be building up. There was concerns that the transformation savings forecast for the current financial year will not be achieved. However, there was a concern expressed about the reserves, but this was recognised, and it was good to hear that there would be a focus on improving or increasing the unearmarked reserves at some point. There was a concern made about the dedicated school grants, particularly the high needs budget. There is a risk there which does need to be mitigated in some way. There was, as I said, a bit of a fundamental disagreement in the approach that should be taken, but this wasn't really supported by the majority of the committee, so there was no resulting recommendations made. But I think overall there was a degree of caution about the MTPF, particularly about the, as I say, some of the inflationary and potential effects of salary increases for the staff. But there were no formal recommendations made, Leader, so I just leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bartlett. And if I just I'll just respond briefly to some of those points. It was a good, robust debate, which was welcomed. I think you're absolutely right to say there's a fundamental, I think I'm using yours, fundamental disagreement in approach. We had a previous administration of the Unity Alliance that when we inherited a £50 million deficit of the administration a year ago, and they also cancelled all of their political priorities and investment. We've been really clear that that's absolutely not what we're going to do. We are going to invest in areas that need it, and it's not, and absolutely in my mind isn't reckless to invest in our people, and it's not reckless to invest in our place either, and we will continue to do that. But the deficit is of half of the position we inherited a year ago, and we have a significant expectation of that improving. So we'd just like to sort of effectively look at the records of the two administrations there. We are investing in our priorities. We have made a commitment to invest in unearmarked reserves. We made that commitment when we were in opposition, and we made it formally through recent papers that have gone through, and I absolutely will stand behind that when we bring our budget forward in February. And lastly, again, looking at the record, we have, I believe this administration should have some confidence in terms of its financial discipline and handling. We did deliver a £5 million surplus within months of inheriting a £50 million deficit. So hopefully that our record speaks for something on that. But I did welcome the debate, and thank you for your involvement in that, Steve. Okay, do any other members wish to speak in paper? Councillor Mike Green.
Thank you, Leader. Just a very brief thank you from me for the doubling of the budget for climate change and responding to the climate and ecological emergency. This is something that, as a council, right the way across the chamber, we were prepared to identify as a priority. What, however, was not a priority, clearly, for the previous administration was the money that was required to actually do something about it. This is going to be a real game changer for the work that we can do and for the results that we can produce here within BCP. And I'm very grateful to see that doubling of the budget on a permanent basis.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mike. And I think it's a really good illustration of a point I was trying to make. You know, that money was taken out of the budget by the previous administration, the Liberal and Green and Labour administration. We've replaced it. We've now doubled it, and now we're making it permanent. So, so great. Thank you for your leadership in that area. Okay. Any other points or questions any of our colleagues would like to make? I'm not seeing that. So then we just move to the recommendations. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. That's unanimous. Okay, so then move to, I believe it's agenda item 7, which is me again, which is the organisational design, the implementation progress. So this is talking about our transformation agenda, a fundamental piece of work. And by transformation, we mean it's the work in bringing the 3 authorities together and then building one organisation that's absolutely at the vanguard of local government in this country. We are in the middle of doing the most complex local government piece of reorganisation. We've delivered, safe landing, and now what we're looking to do in terms of all the services that stood up, and now what we're looking to do is to make sure this is the best local authority in the country. What that means in practice is we'll have, deliver 40 in the region of £44 million worth of efficiencies. So we're delivering a better service and a more efficient service. We have, I think it's fair to note, and the report does talk about the fact that we've had, in terms of the timescale in around some of our delivery around this, we will be facing, some pressure in and around, the COVID situation and where some of the outturns of this might be. But what we're committed to do is to do this right, not rushed. Effectively, so we've had that commitment. We've reduced the saving profile for this year from 15 million to 7.5 million because this administration wanted to do this job correctly. What we have done, and we're really proud of where we are and pleased where we are, we've appointed our strategic implementation partner, which is work from KPMG, one of the absolute leaders in business change, and Agilicis, which are leading exponents of technological capabilities in and around local government. So that partner has been on board for roughly 6 months now, and we've started at some pace with them. If we look at some of the work that's been done to date, the first thing we needed to do was to think about the project in completeness and deliver a high-level plan of what we were going to be able to do, moving very, very quickly into defining our core technological capabilities. So there's a number of systems and processes that we've got across the organisation, and we've now got a clear infrastructure and architecture on what we're actually looking for that to be. So with that clarity, we can now go forward and start planning our work in our services. We've got, as the report says, we've got 8 work streams working. We've started in all of them, so we've done at least the vision exercise in all of them. They range from customer, finance, data and insight, and a number of others, community and partnerships. So there's 8 work streams referenced in the report. Last thing I'll say on this is we've got some urgency. I think we'll all recognise around our children's improvement plan, where our children's services has been a priority from day one of this administration, and we need to effectively do work in children's first. So we're looking at the data migration work for a single social care case management system, and that's been fast tracked. I'll probably leave it there. We've obviously all got the detail in the report, but very much pleased with progress. It is a challenging but really energising and exciting time for this council, and I'm delighted to be involved in the process. And I believe Councillor Broadhead, you're seconding.
Thank you, Chair. Completely agree with all of your comments there. In particular, that this is too important a project to be rushed, and I think that the phrase "right, not rushed" is absolutely pertinent in this scenario. Not just because of the financial implications of getting this right. You highlighted £44 million of financial efficiencies and savings it will make to the council taxpayer, which crucially gives us more money to spend on things that will help people, but also that service. Our aspiration to have one of the most innovative, intuitive council operations in the country is something that should seem great, but actually is just absolutely the right thing to do. It's 2021. I booked my car service in the other day via Facebook and a button to do it, and it still is a source of frustration that so many people to access many of their council services in particular have to go through many different points on the phone and everything. It's just not how the modern world works, and we can be very much at the front of doing that. A really good example, I was out yesterday with some of the companies that our Smart Places team have been working with, and that gives a really good flavour of the level of opportunity we've got here. Out with a lady living in Poole, who some of the smart technology that we're utilising is now able to live independently and hasn't been able to do so before. Not only does that improve the quality of her life, but also it enables a great amount of efficiencies for the continuing financial pressures we face in things like looking after our most vulnerable. And that's just one small example of what we could do if we get this right. So right, not rush is absolutely the way forward. It's the biggest financial contribution that we can make, but more importantly, it's absolutely the right thing to do to provide the best possible service for the people of Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. I think you're absolutely right to bring it back to the people, because that's doing this properly is exactly what that should where that should get us. Okay, please can I bring in Councillor Bartlett, Chair of Overview and Scrutiny, Steve?
Yes, thank you, Leader. Again, we had a fairly detailed debate about this, and in recognition of the importance of the transformation programme, and indeed it being the basic reason for the local government reform, there is obviously a lot of interest in monitoring how this programme is progressing. And there were some concerns expressed about the lack of information and perhaps oversight of the programme to date. However, in talking about that, there was a recognition, and it was accepted, I think, Leader, that there would be a need for all member governance of the programme at some point. And of course, the Overview and Scrutiny Board do intend to bring this item back on its agenda in a few months' time, and we will look at it as and when the board needs to, in recognition of the importance of the programme. So there were no recommendations made, but there was this general underlying concern about the lack of visibility of what's actually going on. Although I accept with the work streams now coming on more online and more detail slowly becoming available, we're likely to see a lot more information coming out over the next 6 to 12 months. So with that, I don't think there's anything more I can add to that. Thank you, Leader.
Yeah, thank you very much, Steve. And again, you're absolutely right. So, there was a commitment, from me in terms of delivering an all-member working party. And as soon as this report has gone through, we will be delivering that. I know there was debate around where this should sit in terms of governance going forward, but I was really pleased with your commitment to keep this on the Overview and Scrutiny agenda. I think it's really important that, despite there being a members' working party, it still needs to be something that main Overview and Scrutiny Board are committed to. And you're absolutely right in terms of now is the time. The work, a lot of it, some background work has been done, setting up the project, and now some more decisions need to be made through those work streams. So now's exactly the time to bring that all-member cross-party group and governance in. Okay, so let me open up to any other member who wishes to speak on this paper. I'm not seeing that, no hands raised, so I'll happily take us to the recommendations. As put, all those in favour, please show. Thank you. That's again unanimous. Thank you. Great. So that moves us on to agenda item 8, which is the Estates and Accommodation Retention of Poole Civic Space report, which again is me, and I believe will be seconded by Councillor Mark Anderson. Thank you, Mark. Really important paper for us. We made a real commitment. Both when we're in opposition, but now when we're in, the Conservative administration, that we need to retain, some of our key assets, and Poole Civic Centre absolutely is one of those. It's a fantastic building. It's a prominent building in the history of Poole, and we've been committed from the outset to changing the focus to sell it to actually no, we're going to keep it. once we've done that, we have to work out, well, effectively, what are we going to do with it? Members will be aware we've decided that as a council that the Bournemouth Town Hall will become the BCP Civic Centre. So in terms of this building's use, and I say this building because we're sat in it now, this building's use as the as a civic centre in terms of where the council will be doing the bulk of its work, that will now move to the Bournemouth Town Hall. So what do we do with this building? The report talks about a red line, effectively, in there, which is the protected part, primarily the protected part of the Pool Civic Building, and then we're looking at actually what we can put in there. It's fundamentally important that we deliver a space for the Charter Trustees of Pool, so this allows the what's currently the council chamber to use there. Also space for the mayoralty, so the mayor's parlour is retained in this plan as well. And then we've also looked at how we can actually bring a more community use to this space. And one of the areas that's suggested and currently we've been doing detailed work on is a potential to move the coroner, who's currently in Bournemouth, to this building. And this report details that aspiration. There's a number of parts of this which are being finalised now, and we're obviously in negotiations and discussions with people like the coroner. So the final delegation is, I believe, to myself and the chief executive. But this gives us a real statement of where we are, and to be absolutely clear, this building will be retained in the ownership of this council going forward. Okay, great. So perhaps I could pause there, and I will bring in Councillor Anderson, who is seconding Mark.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm very pleased to be able to second this report. I think it's an excellent report, and I do like the idea that we've managed to split the council, the building, so we can retain the Grade 2 listed part of the existing building. I think that's very important for the history of the town and for the civic pride of those residents of BCP who actually live in the Pool area. It's quite interesting to note that that several of the rooms here are mentioned, like the Catterstock room, the council chamber, because of their interior facade as well as the external facade. I also wanted to pick up on some of the comments that were made at ONS about community use. The paper quite clearly states that there's 815 metres squared, which will be available to officers and all the community. We talk about the bits that are going to be retained by for the Charter Trustees of Pool, such as the Mayor's Parlour and the associated buildings, rooms that will be needed for that. But it also talks about the fact that BCP councillors, including the Charter Trustees and officers, will be able to make use of the council chamber, the Catterstock room, etc. Talked about the community being able to use them as well. There was a comment at ONS about the fact that they were concerned that the coroner's court may overrun, so they wouldn't be able to use it in the evening. Well, I think the point we need to make is that the coroner's court is very much like a magistrate's court, and that they will adjourn their procedures at set times and continue on the next day. There is no need for them to continue into the night. So I don't think we have that problem. There was also a comment made about where was the mayor's car and the sheriff's car going to park, and the fact that we're going to retain 3 spaces for the 2, the sheriff, the mayor, and for the coroner, if the coroner does come in here, I think are adequately covered in the paper. So I think it's an excellent paper, as I've said, and I think it covers very much what we need to do. So very pleased to support it.
Thank you very much, Mark, and thanks for your support as we've built up the options as well. Okay, so let's go first to Chairman of Overview and Scrutiny, Councillor Bartlett. Steve.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, as Councillor Anderson says, one of the comments made at the meeting regarded the community use of the building, and this was quite important to a number of the members. And I'll come on to the recommendation that arose from that part of the debate in a moment. The other area that was of concern was the energy efficiency of the building itself and what needs to be done to try and improve that. So it's just an item to note if we could look very carefully at the concerns over the energy efficiency of the building. So turning back to the community use, there was concern that, you know, with the rush to get the services, civic services back into the building, you know, the need to use the building for more communal use may sort of come later rather than be considered at the outset. And so that actually led to a recommendation being made, which was fairly marginally won, 7 votes to 6. And what the recommendation says is the Overview and Scrutiny Board recommends that the Cabinet considers how the use of the retained section of the building by community groups can best be accommodated outside of the coroner and mayoralty hours, making appropriate and reasonable adjustments to the current proposal where necessary, whilst accepting this use is secondary to the coroner and mayoralty use. And that was it. Thank you, Leader.
Yeah, thank you very much, Steve. And I think, you know, in reference to that point around community use, I think it was narrowly won the recommendation, but the spirit of it, you know, what we're trying to do, I think was agreed by all, you know, and I made an absolute commitment, and I have done on a repeated number of times now, that community use, you know, will be at the heart of what we're trying to do here. The variety of different community uses, but just to be clear, pure, you know, in the sense of, you know, rooms being available. You know, I mean, it's mentioned in the paper. You know, Councillor Anderson has detailed that out again. So there's never any doubt or question about whether the elements of the building are available to community use. It was whether that was needed, that recommendation, where it was so clearly already in the report. I believe you summed it up really well, Chair, if my memory serves me correctly, when you said, I don't think this recommendation is needed, but it doesn't do any harm, and so let's support it. And I completely, you know, I'm perfectly happy to accept it on that basis, because it's absolutely in the heart of the paper as it stands. So thanks to your committee for the discussion on it. Okay, so now let me move to first of all, I go to wider members of the council, not on the cabinet. So that is Andy Hadley, and then I'll move to members of the cabinet, and I can see Councillor Barron's hand up. So Andy Hadley.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I think it's great that we are retaining the historic core, and I'm pleased that we've clarified that community use is about the meeting rooms and the availability for the community, because that's really important. And I'd draw attention to the way the fire service allow the community to use their buildings, their meeting rooms when they're not needed for their own purpose. I wanted really to make a plea, and it relates to COP26 and our commitment to act and lead on climate and ecological emergency, and the chair of ONS highlighted the issues around energy efficiency. But it's partly, for me, we're spending within the budget you're looking to approve today. There's about £360,000 on 4 line items around heating and electrical isolation. And both of those are really key in terms of what we could and should be doing to really lead on at this point on those. We need to insulate the building so far as possible. Retention of heat and deadening of noise is really important. There's going to be a building site for the other section of the Civic Centre around the coroner, and obviously if the coroner is holding court, they need to be as best insulated as they can from that. The electrical heating is a really inefficient way to do it. It needs to be heat pumps, and we need to check whether or not we need to remove the radiators or have air to water source heat pumps before we do that. In separating the electricity supply, there seems to be a real uncertainty about whether the solar array on the multi-storey car park is actually feeding the building or not. It really should be. We should be donating our spare electricity to the grid and not buying it back at a more expensive rate. Sorry. There's also a voltage regulation on the on the Civic Centre, which again was part of our previous commitments to climate change, and we need to make that better. I think in our wider plans, we persuaded Bournemouth Hospital to go for a campus-style sustainable energy solutions, and we should be thinking the same for the wider Civic Centre site. So I hope that we do that. We have currently 2 co-cars based at Poole, they're Civic Centre. They are the only ones in Poole. There are a number of them based around the Bournemouth area, and we need to have a plan for, again, thinking about sustainable transport, supporting that option. I think we should be leading the way now in attempting to reach net zero targets, and taking the time to do it now will save on revenue costs for BCP taxpayers, which is something that we are all struggling with. As you suggested, the MTFP has ongoing difficulties. So please, can we ensure sustainability is factored into your approvals today, and that work is investigated properly? Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for those points, which I think are helpful. You know, we're clear, you know, as an administration and as a whole council, actually, aren't we, that we have signed our climate emergency declaration. You know, I think Councillor Green indicated earlier on, and I'll bring it up again now. So we now actually have a budget to have an internal team who actually can help us start to lead on some of this work, because we've been able to double that budget and make it permanent. We've just been able to recruit a new head of that sustainability team, which we didn't have any resource for before. So you know, and you have a commitment from me that we will be, you know, fully exploring, you know, how we make, you know, our buildings going forward as sustainable as possible. But we need to do that in partnership with people who know what we're talking about, our senior officers. And now, for the first time, BCP Council, because of a Conservative administration, has the budget for those offices. I will just make a brief point around, you know, your comments around insulation. I think that's, you know, absolutely valid and obviously makes perfect sense. We see again today, you know, that Insulate Britain are closing roads, you know, around this country to try and make a point, which is, in my mind, completely not the way to do politics. You know, members of Extinction Rebellion who are, you know, are doing that. That isn't the way to move the debate forward in this country, and I think people are sick and tired of it. So I commend, you know, the way you've brought forward your argument today, but I absolutely, you know, stand against those members of Extinction Rebellion, including those in our council who support such damaging activism as that. Okay, I've got now Councillor Diana Butler before I bring Councillor Barron in, because I need to go to wider members before we go to Cabinet. So Diana, please can I bring you in now?
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I'd like to make some comments on item 8. You vote on the recommendations of the report. Page 61, background, states that in November 20, the Cabinet approved the budget to deliver phase 1 of the estate's accommodation strategy. And specifically, the intention is no longer to dispose of Poole Civic Centre in its entirety, but to maintain ownership of the core building, to protect the mayoral connection and to consider alternative uses, which is great. But 67, it actually says under the financial risks, this paper assumes the freehold is retained at this time with a view to potential future disposal, residential or commercial development. So my worry, although you've reassured us that you will keep the building, that still doesn't confirm that that's actually what's going to happen in the future, which we don't know what's going to happen. To make these points, really, I've been part of the Poole Charter Trustee group of 8 councillors who actually commented on the special layout needed for the mayoralty, alongside potential major use for the coroner, Dorset coroner. The plans had been redrawn a few times, which is really great, and were actually the red line footprint of the vertical slice was actually expanded as a result. This section is actually at the front of the building, but only equates to 1/5 of the whole building. And as a group, we weren't actually able to discuss the plans for the remainder of the building. The other thing is that public consultation hasn't been given to Poole residents at all regarding the future of the whole building, which is actually listed grade 2 and part of our history, heritage and identity as a town. So by viewing the building as 2 sections, the vertical slice and the rest, the layout is being planned as 2 separate buildings within one, and therefore needs fire escapes. And if you notice on your plans of the internal changes, it's been suggested that needed, which would probably be put into the feature windows of the building in Parkston Road and Sandbanks Road. we actually, as a group, we hadn't actually had the opportunity to meet with the conservation officer, so I don't know whether this is possible or even permissible. The other thing that I'd like to say is that in 10 of your agenda today on urban regeneration and business plan, you're actually looking for office space and infrastructure to complement your housing developments. So we actually have a building here, Poole Civic Centre, purpose-built in the 1930s, plenty of usable. Could we not use the vacant rooms for rent by businesses, charities, possibly health professional training and use by the community? This would provide a substantial regular income for the council whilst retaining the freehold and integrity of the building without the need for major construction works or huge expenditure. I really plead that we look at this as a whole building, not two projects. And if you could look and see on your recommendations about the footprint of the retained building, because again, it's only a fifth of the whole building, and we really need to look at the whole thing. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you, Diana. Really valuable contribution there. I'll come back on a couple of points, and then maybe some of us may as well. So you talk about the financial risks, effectively, paragraph 41, the £300,000. So that's a technical point in relation to the treatment of that £300,000. It says, also goes on to say in that item, this capital receipt was originally anticipated within a relatively short time frame, and that is because the policy that we inherited was the Unity Alliance, the Liberal Democrat led Poor People, Labour supported Green coalition were planning on selling this building, because it says quite clearly in that report that capital receipt was anticipated within, and I quote, a short time frame. Where we have come in and materially changed, the council's policy, and now we're absolutely 100% committed to retaining the building. We have to make that comment in there around the potential treatment of that capital, and I'm sure our section 1 officer and financial team will continue to note that, and we'll see any changes if they're required coming through in the MTFP. You talk, Diana, about the use of the building, and I think that's fundamental. What we're talking about here is about a fifth of the building, and what we're going to do, and what the current options are to do about that retention of that piece, and fundamentally underlining that in that fifth we will have provision for our historic mayoralty and also the charter trustees. That doesn't mean, that doesn't preclude us from having a wider discussion about the rest of the building. So it's only about that fifth. You mentioned the future places, Tim, and I think that's a really good point to bring up. So we are and we will engage with that team to decide what is the best use of this building, this site, for the whole place. What we've done in bringing forward our future places team is we've moved away from just looking at one, disposal of assets, a fire sale I've often referenced, and also secondly, just building simple flats or simple buildings. We do need some of that, but what we need to deliver is a world-class place, and this is exactly what our team of professionals, which we'll see later in the paper, are going to support us to do. For the first time, this council is resourced with the right skills and talent of people to look across our site and see what our whole place needs, not just for how we can sell something or how we can build some flats. So I'm trying to give you some assurance there, Diana. Everything is on the table in and around future use. The only thing that isn't on the table is us disposing of this really key and important building for Poole. So I hope that gives you some assurance. I guess the last point I'll make, Diana, in and around the £300,000, and I'll finish on this because it's fundamentally important. I say it again, under my leadership, we will not be selling this building. So I'm really clear on that, and I can't see how I can give further assurance further assurance on it. But thank you very much for your contributions and your contributions to the Civic Working Party on this, but also the Bournemouth Town Hall Working Party as well. Okay, fine. So thank you both Andy and Diana for your contributions. I'll now move to members of Cabinet. Councillor Barron, Steve.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, I'm hugely pleased that the Civic will remain in council ownership. It's a very important part of Pool's heritage. I witnessed for myself the previous administration ready and willing to sell off our heritage asset. I raised concerns at the time and I was ignored with my concerns. Incidentally, I speak as a real Pool person who actually cares. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, absolutely, Stephen. It's been great to have you on board throughout in terms of your input in terms of what really matters for Pool, and I'm really glad we've been able to, as an administration, come forward and say, look, some of the key sites of Pool, what we're doing with them, and this is one, and we're retaining it. Yeah, and I think it is worth underlining that really clear distinction in policy between what we're doing, we're not disposing of it, and what the Unity Alliance we're planning on doing with this site. Okay, please now come to I'll go to Councillor Anger and then Councillor Lawton. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair. I think it's kind of reassuring that what's been presented in the paper and also what sounds like a very good discussion at the ONS have really sort of looked at all angles of this. So I think the only thing I want to say is we've got through Cabinet we have several projects to do with shall we say sort of repurposing and construction and so on. And I think what's come across in spades is, and has been recognised fully in the paper, is that this building is something quite different, and it's different because of the intangibles around it, to do with not just the features and fittings and so on, but to do with literally the way about this building and the background and the heritage and sort of what the building means. So very pleased that kind of those kind of considerations have found form in the paper. I suppose what's going ahead, the test of our resolve in this is that when this is being moved forward alongside many other projects and there's the inevitable sort of challenges to do with whether it be construction and so on, that literally that kind of holistic picture about what this building means is kept central in those discussions, and nothing is compromised as we get into the rough and tumble of things being taken down, things being moved and things being put somewhere else, because quite rightly the judge of this will be when the whole project is finished, if there is such a thing, when the project is finished and then people look back several years later, and I hope I'm not exaggerating when I say that, several years later, that actually it leaves a very good feeling about what did happen and that people feel proud of it. And that will be a test of this project more than most of the projects that I think we do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I completely agree. Councillor Lawton, Bob.
Thank you, Leader. I'm really pleased to see that we're keeping the historic part of the Pool building. I think it's fantastic news. As a member of the old Shadow Cabinet pre-2019, I've never seen once any indication within those papers of selling off our major assets, i.e. certainly Pool. I don't recall that at all. So something has changed. And it also makes logical sense that the old Bournemouth Town Hall becomes the major hub, because it links the Pool and the Christchurch part that's in the centre, and it's certainly geographically the right decision to be made. I'm totally wonderfully pleased to see that we're keeping the historic part of Pool, because it has a long tradition and we should, as an administration, admire and respect that. Thank you, Leader.
Yeah, thank you very much, Bob. And I'll come to Councillor Broadhead. Phil.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. I just wanted to, directly address the recommendation that came in from View to Scrutiny, which is, in a very similar vein to the points raised by Councillor Hadley and Councillor Butler, which is around the what comes next. I think we're all absolutely key that we'll work collaboratively and creatively together to assure what we can do with this building, really opens up its full potential. But of course, in order for that to happen, we first have to formally confirm what we're actually doing with the building, and that's precisely what this paper is doing. What we are doing, unlike, as you've said, the Liberal Democrat coalition, is that we're not selling it. And the decision not to sell it then unleashes all of the ability for the options that we've talked about. Councillor Butler talks about putting consultation at the heart of what comes next, and I completely agree with that. We can only do that because we're not selling it. Councillor Butler also talks about making the very best use of the building, and as you pointed out, Chair, now that we have our Future Places team in there, we can curate a future for this building that really unlocks all of its historical significance, but also makes it work for the future of Poole and its place. We can only do that because we're not selling it. And then finally, Councillor Hadley's point says we face a climate and ecological emergency. We've got COP26 this week, and it's all very forefront of our mind. We need to make sure that the energy efficiency of the building is absolutely at the pinnacle of what we can achieve. But of course, Chair, we can only do that because we're not selling it. So this paper is about now. It's about saying that unlike the previous administration, we're not disposing of this asset. We're planning for its future and really looking forward to all of the work that will come next because we're not selling it.
Thank you very much, and underlining it nearly as many times as I have over the last few months. Thank you. Okay, and now go to Councillor Green, Mike.
Thanks very much, Leader. Just a very brief response to what Councillor Hadley was saying as well about the energy efficiency, particularly of the building. Obviously, very well said, very well put. I just think we need to get to the stage, though, that we don't need to say these things. The idea that we will be making sure that any changes that are made to the fabric of our assets here in BCP absolutely takes into account the climate and ecological emergency, looks at what we can do as far as sustainability more broadly is concerned, and particularly looks at the the best returns, which will inevitably come from making sure that buildings specifically are energy efficient. So, yes, well said, but it really doesn't need to. That is embedded in the heart of what we do and the decisions that we make now and the way that we go forward with the work that we put into place.
Okay, that's great then. So I'll just take a bit of feedback from Democratic Services. So I don't have anybody else to speak, but we're just to be clear. So we have no issue with the recommendation for overview of scrutiny. Do we need to formally put that into our recommendations before we vote?
Yes, if there's an amendment to the current recommendation, that needs to be included in the proposed by you and second.
Yes, so formally we're happy as recommended by overview of scrutiny. I'll propose that we accept that, and I believe Councillor Councillor Anderson on this occasion is seconding. Thank you. Okay, so the recommendations as amended are before us. Could all of those in favour please show? Thank you, and that is unanimous. Great. Okay, I think that finally is enough for me for a period. So we'll move on to agenda item 9, which is the hugely exciting installation of a core gigabit fibre network linked to the Futures Fund allocation. And I'm very much looking forward to seconding this shortly. But over to Councillor Broadhead to propose.
Thank you very much, Chair. I share your excitement on this one, not least because this is one of the first papers that we brought forward that utilises our Futures Fund. We had a very broad and detailed discussion at overview and scrutiny around this. I think it's worth just bringing out once again exactly what the Futures Fund is there to do. Futures Fund was created by this Conservative administration to have a pot of money, £50 million, that we can essentially use on things like infrastructure projects, or most capital projects, things that you can touch without the necessity for it to make core business case sense from the off. And the reason that is important is first of all that will help unlock future opportunities, particularly as we take forward our regeneration economic delivery strategy in a very bold way into the future, but also because there's sometimes in certain instances there's not the immediacy of that business case for some of the important things to do that are so important for the growth of our area. And we're only able to do that because we created this Futures Fund, and we've already allocated the borrowing repayments for that money that is borrowed from the Public Works Loans Board within our MTFP. So fundamentally it enables us to do things that's not just about a business plan that makes financial sense right now. This is a really good example of a really positive use of the Futures Fund, because what we're doing here is is using 5.87 million of the Futures Fund to create an 70.5 long core gigabit fibre network, which will be fully owned by the council. And actually, part of the reason we're trying to bring this forward as soon as possible, because we've got the Transforming Travel programme as well, about 30 kilometres, so roughly about 40–50% of that can be actually laid down while we're already opening up the roads, which is just, it makes perfect sense. And we've been trying to do that for some time, which also gives some additional saving of around 40%. There's a whole host of things that this gigaband fibre can achieve, and we'll probably only realise the full breadth of what they can do at some point in the future. Obviously, we've got our transformation and smart place programmes, and this will link a number of the council, probably over almost 3/4 of the council properties, with some immediacy, which automatically gives us some savings, which is what this paper is predicated on, over the fact that with some immediacy we don't have to lease this connection from the private industry anymore. So there's some immediate savings there. But also, as we move forward with that really innovative transformation programme that we talked about earlier on, having complete strategic control over our own super high-speed network gives us a whole host of opportunities in the future. This paper is very much centred around the cost savings that it will give in the short term, because that's the right thing to do right now. And on table 2 on page 90 of our report, under paragraph 33, it gives some core numbers around the cost savings and the cost of this borrowing for this. But of course, as paragraph 34 brings out, it doesn't take into account all of those things that come next. And this is why the Futures Fund and the ability to do this is so exciting. It doesn't talk about the future cost avoidance, which we estimated around £9 million in the future. It doesn't talk about the future savings within the council areas such as housing, adult social care, waste, tourism, that having complete control over our network could unlock in a really smart technological way. Doesn't talk about the public sector and voluntary sector organisations that we will want to work with to utilise this closed, very secure network. And and most importantly, it doesn't talk about all of the potential commercial benefits that we could have as we build this network to lease some capacity on the network to others and to work within our Smart Place programme with partners into the future. It doesn't talk about all of those things because that's not what it's about right now. It's about getting on, being the first mover, using the Innovative Futures Fund that we've got so that we can take the initiative. So I'm really pleased to bring this paper forward. Really pleased for the discussion that we had at Overview and Scrutiny. As I pointed out, there was a lot of discussion about that business case model, and hopefully I've explained that that's not what position we're in here. That will come next. But while we've got the ability with this futures funding to take the initiative, particularly while we're able to do so in a cost-effective way through the transforming travel works that are already ongoing, I think it's absolutely the right thing to do. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Phil. And as I said at the beginning, I'm genuinely excited about this. I'm very happy to second. Again, we had a robust conversation at Overview and Scrutiny, so I'll shortly bring in the chair, Councillor Bartlett, to summarise that. You've been really thorough in your introduction of the paper. I think maybe if I'll just spend a little bit of time talking about more the Futures Fund, the piece. So we were clear that there needs to be effectively a dividend for BCP for going through this LGR process. We talked in the earlier paper about £44 million of targeted savings. But what the Futures Fund does is it takes some of those savings, it invests that into some capital public works loan board money, which means that we are for the first time real firepower to actually go and decide where we need to invest in this conurbation. It can be a myriad of different ways, whether that's regeneration schemes that are lacking in viability but are the right things to do, whether that's public realm that we need to stand up, whether that's investment in infrastructure to deliver our big plan. And this, for the first time, we'll be able to do that. There was some confusion, and I understand actually it's perfectly reasonable. This was the first time we've taken a material piece of Futures Fund through Overview and Scrutiny, so we can spend some more time what the Futures Fund actually means. But it's about that piece where we are able, if something was a pure business case where the PWLB can be repaid by the income, then we don't need to use Futures Fund because we'll just go and do it anyway. So it's a new way of doing it. It's a It's in particularly about this, it's investing in that actual infrastructure, the infrastructure of the future, the pipes and cables of the future. So yeah, I'm really pleased as well that we've been able to bring that forward and use this in practice as one of the first examples of it. Perhaps I'll now go to the Chair of Open and Scrutiny to lead us through some of the discussion we had. Steve. Steve, we've lost you. I'm not sure if you're on mute, but your video is just turned off. So good to see you again.
Yep. Sorry about that. Yes, this agenda item certainly generated some excitement within the board, but not of the type of excitement that you've expressed this morning, I'm afraid. There were, and I think a lot of that stems from the fact that we had very little prior knowledge of this idea, this proposal. Having said that, I think the board generally accepted that, to have this network would be of great value, and we recognise its importance in terms of the transformation programme because it's needed for that. But I think the question really, and there were a number of questions, the main question was, is this basically a make or buy decision? Is it something the council should be taking on by itself, or should it be leaning on the infrastructure already provided by other operators within the market? Questions about, do we have a private expert partner in this venture? Should we continue using other companies to provide the expertise to put this infrastructure in? Other questions raised, and I think these are valid. These were raised and not necessarily completely answered at the board. And that was about the full cost of the system. Are there any other costs? Because the costs essentially seem to be about laying the ducting in and laying the cables in, but there wasn't any follow-on cost for the installation of the integration within the various buildings that the network would connect. What would be the cost, for example, of maybe digging up roads which currently don't require digging up? So there was some doubt about whether we were actually seeing what the true cost of the system actually would be. So there were actually two recommendations made during the debate, but neither of them were successful. They were narrowly defeated, so there are no formal recommendations from the board. But one get the distinct impression that there are lots of unanswered questions still, and a lack of confidence about the programme. Having said that, with still an understanding that it is something that is required. It's just how we actually achieve that end. But so yeah, lots of questions, lots of doubts, and I think probably some of those arose because of the speed at which the paper was introduced, and I think Councillor Broadhead has just said, the paper doesn't talk about lots of different things, and I think that's one of the problems. It doesn't cover all of the things that it maybe ought to have done. And there is an issue about the Futures Fund, but I think it was understood that the Futures Fund can be used for infrastructure projects. It doesn't necessarily have to make a profit. We understand that. It's an item of expenditure that's needed to establish the infrastructure which we want to operate. So we understand that. If you can produce some cost benefit from that at the end of the day, that's fine. But the important thing is that the infrastructure is put in place to allow us to do our things. And with regard to transformation, that's obviously one of the most important things that the council's doing. And it won't be possible without this kind of infrastructure. So it's just a question, as I said initially, about how you achieve it. And the board were generally concerned about whether we were doing this in-house and owning the system was really the right thing to be doing. But having said that, as I said, there were no recommendations that were passed, although they were narrowly defeated at the meeting. But with that, I think I've probably outlined the general feeling of uncertainty that was expressed at the board. And with that, I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Leader.
Yeah, thank you very much, Steve. And I'll say, and I agree. I think I said in the meeting, but this is a complicated, paper is a complicated thing, and we need to look at ways we can get wider member involvement earlier. I know we've got a sort of a huge amount of all member seminars, going on at the moment. There's been some debate about, when that's appropriate, when that isn't appropriate, but we are genuinely keen to explore how we can, on something as complicated potentially as this, we can engage, members. And I know, we can hopefully work together with that to work out what answer to that is going forward. There was an added time pressure in terms of this piece. We are digging up roads because of transforming travel at the moment, and we're absolutely committed. We're not going to dig up roads twice if we don't need to. So we're trying to bring some more commercial pace in effectively and decision making some of that. So, but no, it was a useful discussion. I'm not sure if Councillor Broadhead will come back on any of the specific points. So I'll perhaps let come in at the end. Okay, great. Fine. So then I'll go to wider members of the council. Councillor Andy Hadley.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I very much support the concept of having our own fibre connections where there's a need, but I continue to be quite concerned at the lack of detail in this paper. And as the Chair of ONS has summarised, I don't propose to go through everything that I raised in that meeting. You talk about experts quite often, and I wrote the business case for the fibre optic network in Poole Hospital and worked on the wide area networking for the NHS across Dorset. This already feels a very dated model, and it feels dated in terms of the three key areas that you're talking about here. So one is the wide area network. Increasing the need is to link our users to data centre based operations in the cloud, not back to the headquarters. So we're using Office 365, we're using today Teams, for example. We're increasingly using Azure-based applications and moving things that were sitting in the bowels of the town hall in Bournemouth or the civic centre at Poole or at Dorset County Council into the cloud. We do already have our own fibre network in Poole, which covers the CCTV. But again, CCTV is moving to cloud-based operations. It means you don't have to worry about the building burning down and the evidence of who burned the building down going with it. And even domestic security cameras are now based on cloud storage. And in terms of traffic, a lot of the sensors are wireless. We're moving to Internet of Things, and they're using 3G connections, but presumably, hopefully moving towards the use of the 5G as that gets dispersed across the piece. The real key thing is that all of these things need to link from wherever they are across the whole of BCP back to the cloud, not to the core. And that's the fundamental design bit, which I think is being missed. We have 62 of the 85 sites are claimed to be on the routes of the TCF corridors or the other lines that are on the map that you have in the appendix, but they're not directly on the line. So there is digging up beyond the point. But how many of those 85 sites are we actually keeping? The transformation is about looking very hard at all the sites we've got and potentially changing where we operate from, including new sites. And I know, having worked in networking, that it's a perpetual churn of where the physical sites are. So hardwiring on the basis of 50-year life to 85 sites, I think is looking into the way too far into the future in terms of our hopes for it. Paragraph 30 assumes that 2/3 of the cost of the wide area network are in leased fibre networks. Well, that's the leased fibre networks plus the electronics that sits at either end of those. And the electronics is what changes. That's what probably has a 5 or 7 year life at most, not a 50-year life. But those costs are in the existing wide area network costs. And I think that's is a significant overestimate to claim that you can get £200,000 out, because we're not including those intelligent things within what is being purchased here. So I think the significant further work needs to be done on both the design for the future and ensuring the wider benefits at paragraph 24 are actually deliverable, because they are dispersed across BCP. It would be great if we had an offer for getting people connected who couldn't otherwise afford to be on the internet, because so many services are delivered that way. The network, as you're being asked to approve today, doesn't do that. I think when we're salami-slicing so many of our basic services in order to make the MTFP work, this lack of payback over 54 years doesn't seem a good way to spend the taxes. So I'd urge you to seek further clarification or checkpoints on the design. I'd be very keen to collaborate and to support that, and to rely on experts, but actually to query those experts in terms of what are we actually building for the future, rather than recreating what we've had already. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andy. And we don't have any other questions from other councillors. So Phil, would you like to come in at this point?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you very much, Councillor Bartlett and Councillor Hadley, for your input. Much of which was covered at the overview and scrutiny board meeting as well. I think, Chair, but both of my fellow councillors are quite right. There's a lot of further work to be done here, but clearly we need to get on with this. We have this opportunity, particularly with a 40% cost saving, whilst we're putting the physical infrastructure in the ground while we're already digging up the roads. And if you stop anybody on the street, I think they would just say that just makes sense. Just directly addressing a few of the criticisms, Councillor Bartlett talked about, well, why don't we just rely on the market to do a lot of this? Well, we currently actually do, but that doesn't actually resolve a lot of the then opportunities that we talk about in this paper. If we just continue to rely on others' hardware that's in the ground, we don't have the strategic control that unlocks all of the opportunities that I talked about in 34 in the future. It doesn't also enable us to have the cost savings that we talk about, again, by not having to lease network actual infrastructure from others. So actually there are times absolutely as a free marketeer that you absolutely want to have private industry to have the answer, but where you do have the opportunity, particularly at the scale that we have, to do it ourselves, it makes financial sense, and it also makes some placemaking sense. And a really good example of that is the work that we've already done in this arena through a part of our smart place agenda in Lansdowne in central Bournemouth, where we installed our own fibre optic core network then. We also then were one of the world leaders in putting our own 5G network in there, which the council owned. And people said at the time, why on earth are you doing that? People are going to come in and put 5G in anyway. Well, it's because it wasn't just about competing with the market. It's about giving a strategically owned and closed network, which was then we had the ability to do whatever we want with. And I'm so proud of the work that unlocked. That has brought a whole host of different businesses to the Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole area, because they can use that network, which we have control over, in a way that they can't do anywhere else. And I'm really pleased tomorrow night to be going to an awards ceremony where one of those companies that has relocated to Bournemouth specifically to use that network that we created is up for a national award, and the person that's actually running that company, Chair, has just been voted the Indian Businessman of the Year, and he moved to Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole because of the work that we've done in this arena. So that's what this is about. I completely accept there's a tremendous amount of work fleshing it out in the future, but if we don't start now, then we fail to realise those opportunities. So I'm more than happy to work with other councillors as we flesh out all of those opportunities in the future. But right now we need to make a decision. I firmly believe it's the right one to make at this moment in time.
Yeah, thank you. Just briefly going on top of that point, around, is it us? Is it the market? Well, it's got to be both, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And where we can display to the market that we're coming in to do some infrastructure pieces, then that I'm absolutely convinced will then give further confidence, which would mean the market will come in behind us, as you've just eloquently set out. Yeah, just to underline, there is a commitment from this administration to work with all councillors to understand how we can more collaboratively work together on these projects, and very happy to take suggestions on how we do that. And Councillor Hadley, I've actually the email you sent to me post overview and scrutiny, I've now got enough detail for an answer for, so I'll be sending that back to you later today. Thank you very much for your comments in that. Okay, do any other members of Cabinet wish to speak on this paper? I'm not seeing that, so I'll look forward to the recommendations as put. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. That is unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, so then we go to agenda item, I believe it's agenda item 10, which is BCP commissioning plan for regeneration and development and the Urban Regeneration Company, which is now known as Future Places business plan. Councillor Broadhead.
Thank you very much, Chair. We've taken a number of papers through Cabinet and Council recently regarding our regeneration aspirations for the whole Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole area going forward. So I'm very conscious that this could look like just another one, but it's not. All of those previous papers were about the strategy that we're in place, about unlocking all of the potential that we've got in our area, not just for the council-owned sites, of which outside of the already formed Bournemouth Development Company, we've got about £2 to £3 billion of redevelopment and regeneration plans, which will really help to take our area to the next level, but also about the the impact that we can have on the placemaking across the whole of the rest of BCP outside of the council-owned sites as well. So we've talked in previous papers around the strategy. What we've got here in front of us is the plan for delivery, and it's actually in two parts. And I apologise for the extreme amount of content in here, but I think it really does demonstrate the amount of intense work that has gone in by officers, Future Places team, and many others in order to make sure that we've got as robust plans as possible. So the two parts we have in this paper are, first of all, the BCP commissioning plan, and secondly, the Future Places business plan, which has been much touted and now is finally with us. I'll deal with them both in turn. First of all, what we've tried to do with looking at all of the aforementioned opportunities we've got in the regeneration area, there's a lot there, and we need a really firm plan to make sure that we've got a corporate strategic grip on it. And with the help of our interim Director of Delivery, Dave Anderson, who's got an extreme amount of experience in this area, we've decided to take a commissioning approach to that, and that's what this commissioning plan is about. We've got our wholly owned urban regeneration company, Future Places, which is now up and running. We've got the Bournemouth Development Company, which has a whole host of option sites across the Bournemouth area and is continuing to deliver them with a plumb into the future. We've also got our Boscombe and Bournemouth Towns Fund Board, where we've attracted £23 million investment from government. And we need a plan to make sure that we've got some strategic oversight of all of them, to make sure that they're working collaboratively, but also to make sure that we're using all of the assets available in the best possible way. That's why we've adopted this commissioning approach, and this approach, as we've called it, it retains an intelligent client function. It helps to minimise risk, it helps to facilitate cross-party collaboration, and also maximises the real impact that we've got in this area. So the paper takes you through in great detail what this intelligent client function, this commissioning plan will undertake. That will undertake contract management, performance monitoring, and real oversight for all the activities of the BDC, Future Places, and the Boscombe Towns Fund Board. And as you can see in paragraph 14, it gives a structure for how that is going to work in the future. And the appendix goes into great detail about the governance arrangements, the corporate structure, so that I don't think anybody can say with any criticism whatsoever that we've got a really robust approach for how we're going to manage our regen aspirations into the future. What the paper also then does is brings forward the Future Places business plan, and it's slightly frustrating that at the moment this is in the confidential section. It is a bit frustrating, so I will be working at trying to figure out how much of that we can put into the public domain, because whilst there are some sensitive parts of that around figures of what particular piece of land, etc., are worth, it actually, in a really, really helpful way, explains what we're really trying to do differently with the Future Places the company. First of all, we're adopting a stewardship approach to regeneration, which is very different from the standard approach, which you look at most sites normally. A private landowner owns a site. When they're looking at redeveloping it, what they want to do is get planning permission and then either sell it on or rent it on, as we're seeing increasingly. And the real drive of that is profit, and profit is short-term profit, and there's no real extra uplift in value for doing all of those placemaking things that we really want to see. Now that we've got super strategic control over all of these sites, we can adopt a very different approach, which talks about long-term patient capital, putting placemaking and extra investment into things like the public realm at the very heart, because that's the way really to curate the place that we want, but also the real way to get added value out of many of these sites. And you look at some areas that have done this in a really joined up way. Poundbury is the example that people always use, but fantastic place that really is highlights all that can be done if you take a much more combined and long-term approach to regeneration. It's exactly what we're planning on doing here. Within the paper, it talks about the sites that we'll be delivering, which is now got to about 13. That's in table 1 of the report. But also it talks about all of the other things that the Future Places team are going to be undertaking and being our strategic brains of all things regeneration. Paragraph 33 in the report highlights all of the work they're already underway, from everything from our hotel gap analysis to our retail retail work into the future, the high streets, things like how we get around and our transport and rail frequency, so that we can make sure that the place is at the centre of everything we do. That's quite different to most other regeneration companies, Chair, which are solely focused on project acceleration. We've figured out here that if we really want to not just accelerate the projects but do it in the best possible way, we need to make sure that everything is connected as possible. So a tremendous amount of work has gone into this paper. We've got our commissioning plan, which I think is one of the more robust ways of commissioning regeneration services of any local authority in the country. We've got the business plan for Future Places, which, aside from being one of the largest publicly owned regeneration companies in the country, I think is also one of the most innovative in its stewardship approach as well. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Phil. And yeah, I'm personally really pleased to second this paper. This is something we came in early with our big plan, which was about having a big plan for our area, and we've got all the natural resources to be one of the best places in the world. Let's make it an absolute world-class city region. We weren't able to do that if we didn't have the team and the skills and resources to support us through that process. And this actually is exactly that. I'm delighted in what you brought forward in terms of that stewardship context as well. In terms of that, if we're trying to deliver a world-class place, it's that long-term value for the place and and value in that regard. I'm also, really pleased that and if you look at, some of the regeneration projects have worked really well. They put that consultation, very much the people consultation at the heart of what they do, and the big conversation that's upcoming through this, I think will help us drive some really great value as we engage our whole community in terms of that. I think we're already seeing the benefit of some of the strategic resource we've got, so outside of just pure regeneration, but what else we need and the council can use as a resource around whether that's driving culture, extra care villages and the like, and how we can actually genuinely get some of the best thinking in the country together. In second's paper, can I just we've got Gail Merhew, who's a MD designate of the URC with us today, so thank you very much, and also Chris Twigg, who's done an immense work with us on this through Inner Circle. So thank you very much, both of you, to the journey we've been on for the last 6 months, getting here, your faith in what we're trying to achieve as a place. Also need to personally thank this has been an immense piece of work in a really short time frame, and to do that we've had to push the boundaries in terms of what we can and can't achieve. So my personal thanks to our Chief Exec, Graham Farron, Head of Legal, Susan Zeiss, and Section 151 Officer Adam Richard, who've worked alongside me and Phil from the outset of this, and then when we brought on Dave Anderson to really move this forward internally, that's been great as well. So we've done a lot in 6 months. I think this now puts us in a position to really go forward and deliver that world-class city region. But thank you for everybody's support and trust in that. I wasn't at the evening's overview and scrutiny session, so I'm not aware of the detail of what's coming. But if it was like the afternoon session, I'm sure it was robustly debated as ever. And on that, I will bring in the Chair of Overview and Scrutiny, Councillor Stephen Bartlett. Steve.
Yes, thank you, Leader. You'll be delighted to know the evening session on this particular agenda item was well received and broadly supported by most members of the board. Indeed, the quality of the report was congratulated, and it really was a first-class report, and this was recognised by the members of the board. There was just one area of concern, and that related to the representation on the company board itself, and there was a view that there should be cross-party representation on the board of directors for the company. This went to the vote, and it was equally divided, and so the chair of the board voted against the motion, so it wasn't carried. But it does give you a level, a feeling for the level of concern that there isn't cross-party representation on that board, so you may wish to think about that again. But as I say, well received. I personally found it a very exciting paper, and I wish the company well for the future, with some very exciting projects for the conurbation in there. If I may take this opportunity, Chair, this is an item that I had not raised at the board, which has occurred to me subsequently to that, and it's just a minor point. Well, not minor, but I'd just like you just to make the point that in the process towards the gateway approvals for the various projects, I would like to see an earlier assessment of outline planning consent. The planning consent comes fairly late in the process, after which an awful lot of expenditure may have been expended without a guarantee of planning approval. I would just like to see a bit more work done earlier on in the process in terms of maybe an outline approval before we spend too much money on any particular project. So if you could, if someone could just look at that, I'd appreciate that. But that was it. So thank you very much, Leader.
Thank you, Steve. That's great, and I'm sure in summing up, Councillor Broadhead can reflect on that last point. Okay, do we have any other comments on this paper? I don't see it. So what I'll do is I'll come to you to sum up, Phil.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to Councillor Bartlett. It was it was actually a very productive meeting. I think most people, most other councillors across the board, really understand what we're trying to do here. We've got. I think we all accept that we've got a tremendous amount of opportunity. We all accept that the old way of doing things wasn't working, and within the recommendations here, although it has already been agreed at a previous cabinet, there are some extra resources that we're putting in at this stage, which will have to be approved by council, and that's in the recommendations going to the next full council. But that's precisely because we're now moving forward at pace with a number of these regeneration projects, and we're starting to incur some ground costs for things that we're going to have to do on the ground. And I think that's a real demonstration of positive activity rather than cost spiralling out of control. So really do appreciate the board for your work on this. Councillor Bartlett's right, there was some discussion around representation on the board. I think what I tried to do in clarifying at the meeting was to explain that this is a little bit different from some of the other companies that we either interact with or kind of partly own. When we have external companies, I think it's really external companies where there aren't in full council ownership. I think it's really important that we hold them to account. We've got relationships with people like the BH Live and the Bournemouth Development Company where we've got interaction with them. They're not wholly owned, and we have cross-party involvement on the boards of those because it's the right thing to do. What we've tried to do with this, by having a wholly owned council company, but crucially within this paper talking about the commissioning plan, I think it gives us that real strategic control over the commissioning plan stage. That's where the input of councillors really come into focus. But then the autonomy for the Future Places team, because they have a really defined remit through the commissioning plan to actually get on and then crucially report back. So we don't have to hold them into account in the same way that we would an external partner where we would need presence on the board, because it is a company that is in full strategic control of the council and has a really clear remit. So that was the kind of explanation for that board, and that's precisely why what we're trying to do with the board of Future Places is that the hope is that we'll have both an advisory board and the main board, which will be absolutely stacked with external talent that will be driving their input and their expertise into it, because that board is less about holding a body to account that's running away doing its own thing, and more making sure that the body that we've contracted to do the work is actually doing it and bringing as much expertise in as possible. So I think that autonomy is really important. We have strategic control through this really refined commissioning plan that we've got in place. So really pleased. Hopefully, I was about to say, hopefully with the last regeneration paper you'll hear from me for a while, but I think that's probably not the case at all, because we've got some advanced plans, so you'll probably hear from me again in a few months. But it's great, as you pointed out, Chair, that with only really 6 months from kicking this off, we've now got a fantastic experienced team in place, some real activity on the ground. I think one of the most robust commissioning plans of any local authority in the country. Thank you, Chair.
Absolutely great. Thank you very much. Okay, so really thorough close there. So we've got recommendation as per. All those in favour, please show. Thank you, and really glad that's unanimous as well. Thank you. Okay, let's move to agenda item 11, which is levelling up, creating a skills commission. And I'll again to come to you, I believe, Councillor Broadhead, and then Councillor Green, Nicola Green second.
Thank you very much, Chair. If you ever wanted, to talk about that robust that you have to go through all of the pages to get onto the next item. So there we are, I'm nearly there. Right, levelling up, very topical at the moment, as we all know, and is a central thrust of what the government's agenda is at the moment, so much so that they've renamed you know, a whole department after levelling up, and we'll be working really closely with them. Of course, levelling up isn't just about, you know, buildings and the north. It's around, centrally, it's around people, and in particular down here in the south. You know, if you look at the areas where we probably need levelling up the most, I think it's around two things. It's probably around house affordability for the young, and it's around skills, particularly for our young people. And one of the things that struck us recently is actually how much potential we've got in the skills arena. We've had a lot of conversations with higher education institutions, with private industries, you know, some of the major players that we've got in this area, all of whom have both identified that we have a bit of a skill shortage and we need to put some serious focus on this in the future. But I've also stood up and said, we want to contribute to this. We want to put some resource, some time, some experience into driving that skills agenda forward. But at the moment, there's no real easy central place for coordination to bring that together. This paper came out of a conversation that I started, that we started with Emma Hunt, who's just the outgoing Deputy Vice Chancellor of Arts University Bournemouth, and we both pretty much at the same time realised that if we really want to unleash all of the potential we've got in the skills arena and bring together all of the work that people want to do, from charities to business, somebody probably needs to be the first mover and pull it together. That's precisely what this proposal is about, to create a time-limited Dorset Skills Commission, not to do anything that we haven't done before, but just to make sure that we've got that coordination of energy. We're doing this, the proposal here is for this to be a joint piece of work with Dorset Council and Dorset LEP. And as it talks about in the report, it's really to unleash all of the effort that's trying to be going on in this area. This paper is about making the decision to create that. Again, we took this through Obium scrutiny, and there were some understandable questions about what does that look like, who would chair it, what involvement would be. And the short answer is we probably don't know, because I think it'd be really important that this Skills Commission would have a really strong independent chair, and it'd be really important as well that they set their own remit, because whilst we've identified that there's work to do in this area, we don't know what we don't know. And if we really want to make an impact in this area, we need to give them as open a remit as possible. I'll let my colleague Councillor Green come in and talk a little bit more about the intention of what this will mean for people on the ground, but I think it's pretty central to our economic delivery, which is the area that I look after, particularly in terms of what levelling up means for us, that we take all of the natural opportunity and that we've got in the area and make sure that somebody is the first mover and coordinating, and that's precisely what we're trying to do here. So more will be coming in terms of the fleshing out of what the Skills Commission will actually do, but this report is saying we've identified there's a need, we've identified there's loads of energy for people wanting to do stuff, and we want to start with that coordination to bring it together and unleash its potential. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, and I'll move to Councillor Nicola Green.
Thank you, Lido, and thank you, Councillor Broadhead, for your introduction and all the other papers you've presented. This is the point at the meeting when you hand over to me and I have the papers to present. But actually, had we planned it, I don't think we could have done it better in terms of that. This is the point where the interface happens between our economy and our people. And it's absolutely about the skills and it's about the needs and what we can offer for the future. Our economy clearly is inextricably linked with the welfare of our residents and linked with education and the prospects of our young people. And it's not just young people. Of course, skills is an all-age agenda. We know many people retrain later on in their working lives and are looking for a framework around which for that to happen. But here, in this skills paper, our ambition is to make sure that we achieve those best outcomes and prospects for all our residents. My aim clearly is to ensure that we have an economy which is truly inclusive for all our people. Our next paper is on our appreciative inquiry into inclusion across our school and college sector. But what we really look at in this paper is building upon the assets, and I will return to that in a future paper again, the assets within our community. And Councillor Jane Kelly has ensure that we all understand that asset-based community development includes people, and we recognise those assets which we all contain. So this paper really focuses on the combination of the council's role in placemaking and encouraging the private sector to play their leadership part as well. And it's very timely, I think, that we pick now to launch this Skills Commission. I was at the Overview and Scrutiny Board, the second meeting, when I'm very glad you'd had an opportunity to have a brief rest, Chairman, but there was, I think, a very productive and constructive discussion around this paper, and certainly I welcome some of the challenge. I think we mostly respond to it, and it is contained in the paper, but just for members who weren't there, you may be interested in the notes that I made. One of the questions was, why now? Why is this the time? And I think we recognise that COVID has been a complete game changer in terms of the prospects for our young people, in terms of how the economy is going to recover and reshape itself. And we need really to make sure that we've got a Skills Commission which is looking to the future. The job is never done of a Skills Commission. You take what you have and you cast your eyes to the future and to opportunities, but clearly that future is not something which we control. It develops organically, and therefore it's something that needs to be revisited, but now seemed absolutely the right opportunity to say, so what is our view at the moment? It was noted that the colleges weren't specifically mentioned, and higher education wasn't front and centre of the writing of the paper, which is it's a fair note, but actually I think we all know that they are absolutely crucial, and there is certainly no intention to exclude anyone, and that's absolutely the point, the 16 to or the 14 to 19 agenda, where we need to have really, really strong input from schools, colleges, and other partners. Had we invested enough money in here, which is quite an unusual question to be asked as a member, have you put enough money into it? Again, a fair challenge, but we did recognise that this is a real partnership piece of work, and that there is an awful lot of contribution in kind and in timing that's being devoted by others. And had we set ourselves long enough by asking us to report back at the back end of 2022? And again, I think we responded to say that that was a recognition that this is not set in stone. We have to do the work, we have to find what we think is happening, and we have to respond to it. But we recognise that this is not a task and finish piece of work. It's not done once, but it's about reshaping how we respond. So I hope I've covered off some of those issues that were raised. As I say, they were done in a very constructive manner, and thank you, Chairman, for the contribution of your board in looking at this paper. So very happy formally to second those recommendations. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, and yeah, really exciting piece of work that does talk about the future of our people and our people economy. Okay, I'll come to Councillor Bartlett, Chair of Overview and Scrutiny. Steve.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Yeah, thank you, Councillor Green, for the summary really of the details of the questions that came out from the board. And all I can say is that yes, the paper was broadly supported by the board, and with that, there were no recommendations made. I think that's all I need to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I'll look to any other members who wish to discuss this paper. I've got Councillor Iyengar, Mohan.
Yeah, very welcome indeed, this paper. Just on behalf of the Cultural Compact Board, who've this has come up in the last few recent meetings, and Emma Hunt, it's a shame she's leaving us very shortly, going to a different part of the country, but obviously within the Cultural Compact Board she's had leadership of that particular theme to do with skills, quite understandably given her role hitherto, and very keen on assisting moving this one forward. So we've got a hole to fill there on the Cultural Compact Board. I think the point of saying that on the Cultural Compact is that while inevitably sometimes we think of these things and the focus may tend to be on STEM related things, I think on behalf of the Cultural Compact Board, I suppose I wouldn't I, is that naturally the push from there is that this embodies the whole the whole remit, and it's the A in the middle of STEM which becomes STEAM, which is arts and creative development as well. And that is in the paper, and it's great. And certainly through me and through everybody else associated in that area, there will continue to be a very, very strong lobby for artistic culture and creative development as well, being part of this skills campaign. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And was it Councillor Lawton? Yeah.
Thank you, Leader. Just a quick one. I totally endorse this paper. We have, as you're probably aware, a very high ambitious house building programme coming up over the next 5 or so years. And any investment that we put into the skill set of our working people who live within the BCP area, for our young people and our elderly people who wish to change skills and employment, are really good. So I'm really excited about this paper, and it certainly facilitates and helps us to build new homes for people. Thank you.
Yeah, I think two really great points by both of you raised there, because effectively it's, you know, in terms of culture, it's saying, and we've reflected it very much in the Future Places team paper as well. You know, it's creating a whole ecosystem, isn't it? You know, of what a world-class place is, and that is culture and skills invested in that. But then you can't build a place if you haven't got the skills in that sector as well. Obviously, my background more recently is in running an engineering group. We know at first hand, you know, about the difficulties in terms of skills for that environment, particularly, you know, in our aerospace manufacturing business. So, you know, this is absolutely, you know, really fundamental and vital that we grasp this, we invest in it. You're absolutely right, Councillor. Somebody needs to take the lead and put it all together. What an energy we've seen from the community, the business community, in terms of let's come and fix this problem. At exactly the same time, you've got the government. This is, you know, the government talking at its, you know, its main point around building a high wage economy and how levelling up is a very skills based piece of work. Let's marry those two things together and let's really do something special, whether that's engineering, whether that's construction, whether that's hospitality, culture, you know, that whole wide range of skills. You know, we know about our workforce challenges in health as well. Massive opportunity and some really interesting work coming through from Tricuro about how we're going to address that skills challenge as well. So this really is an all, you know, a cross boundaries, you know, approach, and I fully support the work that's gone into it. Okay, I'll just pause briefly to see if anybody else would like to speak, which I'm not seeing. Councillor Broad, would like to sum up?
Thank you very much, Jen. Thank you for the enthusiasm from everybody on this. You're right, it is becoming topical, as is indeed the whole levelling up agenda. And I'm delighted that we'll be bringing forward a paper in the next couple of months as well, talking about all of the different things that we're doing up across the levelling up agenda, not just in skills, but, you know, across the board, and bringing that together as part of a strategy, not just because it's the right thing to do, but, you know, being, you know, brutally honest as well. This is a central part for what government are wanting us to concentrate on, quite rightly. They'll be bringing a lot of funding streams based around this as well. So, you know, it's you know, there's a bit of serendipity around the fact that not just is it the right thing to do, but also, you know, we need to have a singular focus on this to make sure that we're unlocking the investment from government in this area as well. So really pleased. Like, I'm really excited about what is going to come out on this. We don't know exactly what the outputs will be, but I can tell you right now, some of the conversations that we've had already from people wanting to get involved and wanting to put their resources into making a difference in our area is just, you know, it's sometimes overwhelming. Today we've seen in the press, you know, one of our largest employers, JP Morgan, talking about their enhanced apprenticeship program with, you know, 500 applicants in the first round of their new program, which they're calling the Switch. We've met with companies, world-class companies such as BAE Systems, you know, based in Christchurch, fantastic engineering company at the forefront of many of their sectors, that are even prepared to donate a building to being a skills hub as part of this agenda. Councillor Iyengar talks about the cultural and arts input in this arena as well, and we're now attracting world-class talent like Stuart Semple and his giant gallery in the centre of Bournemouth, which means that we're you know, rapidly becoming a cultural hub for the South Coast as well. There's skills in that area that we need to work with players like our Arts University, Bournemouth, and others to unlock all of that. And as you've correctly pointed out, we have challenges and opportunities in the healthcare sector as well. All of these are about skills. The aim of this is to pull it together and, you know, as I said earlier, unleash the potential. So really looking to see what the outputs will be. Thank you, Jeff.
Absolutely great. Thank you. Okay, so we've got recommendations as put. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. That is unanimous. Great. Okay, up next, we're just going to a slight change to the agenda. We've got 2 items. One, Agenda 12, which is Children's Services Capital Programme, which should be next, and then agenda item 13, the BCP Appreciative Inquiry. I had a discussion with portfolio holder Nicola Grid on this, and it makes more sense if the Appreciative Inquiry is taken first, as the capital piece will be at least in part following on from that. So to be clear, we're now taking agenda item 13, which is a BCP Appreciative Inquiry into inclusion practices in BCP schools, and then we'll come back to agenda item 12 after this. And I move to Councillor Nicola Green to remove the item.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, colleagues, for allowing for that juggling around of the agenda. This could arguably be called a levelling up piece, following on from the skills paper that we've just seen. But as we discussed at overview and scrutiny, for me, what that was all about is inclusion. And it sets out many of the challenges that we have as we go forward into what levelling up might require across BCP. The paper sets out the direction of travel for education across the conurbation, and hence, for me, it's an extremely important document. We have a very significant and unusual opportunity, and we have the need to reset the relationship between the council, schools, partners and parents as we set out our vision. This report follows from a series of structured conversations which were led by Anthony Douglas, who is our advisor from the Department of Education. He and I worked alongside on these conversations with schools and other partners in April of this year, and the report follows on from them. It dovetails very neatly with our response to the Ofsted area inspection into special educational needs and disabilities. Of course, the formal response to the Ofsted inspection will follow by the submission of the written statement of action in due course. But the substance of this inquiry deals with the point that the local picture around inclusive practice does not currently reflect the educational outcomes of our young people, and the contrast is stark, leading to disadvantage for some across our communities. It shouldn't be confused with the written statement of action, but it does pick up on some of the same practice. It's unsurprising that in speaking with some of the same people, we found the same picture. Excuse me, Peter. And our concern is to seek to address some of those challenges. I would like to thank all of those who were involved and participated in this inquiry. It was a big piece of work. The openness and the time committed from the school, from the leaders, and from the embedded practice and the reflections of SENCOs, it enabled us to get well under the cover of the surface, listening to practice-based experience, which we shared and triangulated with others. It leads us to a set of recommendations which we believe will bring about real improvements for our children and young people. While Cabinet are currently being asked to accept the direction of travel, there's a great deal of further work to do, and I will be bringing that forward in due course. This report has been circulated widely and commented on, but there will be further work needed as we build those business cases to address those wide-ranging recommendations. This, of course, will be a partnership exercise involving all willing partners and will be a paradigm shift indeed for the way in which we've gone about designing services. There is a dynamism within this sector, and some enterprising partners are already making offers of help, and I'm deeply grateful to them. Work has begun through the Schools Forum to look at revising the funding, which can enable children and young people to stay in mainstream schools, being educated within their communities and with their peers, while receiving the additional support they need. As I said at the beginning, many of our findings didn't really surprise us, but the commitment and the enthusiasm to find a solution was heartening. And having openly acknowledged all the challenges, we are pointing towards the future with some enthusiasm. Again, as I said earlier, it's about building on the assets that we've got, some excellent local practice, but spreading that and embedding it across the whole area, removing institutional barriers and protectionism, which we have to be honest has sometimes existed, and asking ourselves at every point what is in the very best interests of our children. In closing, I would just like to add my thanks to all those who I might not have mentioned, to the Schools Forum, to head teachers, to SENCOs, to officers, but particularly I'm very deeply grateful deeply grateful for the leadership in this space shown by Anthony Douglas. He's been supporting our improvement journey within BCP Children's Services under the auspices of the Department for Education, and he brings to this whole agenda an independence, his experience, and above all, his credibility to what we're trying to achieve. I look forward to taking this onwards to the next stages, working with overview and scrutiny, with partners, and bringing back business cases in due course. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nicola. And yeah, absolutely. I'm delighted to second this paper here today. What I was going to talk about, it was just you've already really eloquently explained. I think you know the word you used, Nicola, was a paradigm shift, and it's exactly what this is. It would have been really easy to have taken a more historic, protectionist culture where we weren't, open to have a really honest conversation. How that's come about is in strong leadership, isn't it? And I thank you for your personal dedication to this. But you're absolutely right. We've had that strong leadership and support through Anthony Douglas. And if you just remember, Anthony, he's been awarded the CBE for services to family justice, and he has a man of real genuine integrity in terms of this conversation. So that's supported. We've got our Director of Children's Services, Elaine Redding, who's had a distinguished career, across children's services, and we're absolutely, delighted to have on board in terms of that strong leadership across the board has enabled us to have this paradigm shift of a conversation. It is risky because it's not the same old, because we are unearthing challenges, and we are having an honest conversation, but the energy that conversation is starting to bring is needed, and it's a great opportunity for us. We can do something and really move this sector and this space forward through that root and branch, honest, genuine conversation. I think we've shown, as an administration, we're absolutely, delighted to stand behind, whatever needs to come out of this, whether that's increased budget into children's services, or whether that's, trying to come up with innovative ways to put capital into our SEND environment through our 10 million fund we put forward in the last budget. So I'm absolutely delighted that we're having this brave and bold conversation. I think it's a fantastic piece of work. I would encourage anybody who's got an interest in this space to look at the full appreciative inquiry document. I think it's brilliant. Okay, and probably I should pause at that point and see if anybody else would like to come in. I don't believe this. Obviously, it was different. It would have been the children's overview and scrutiny, wouldn't it? Okay, fine. Any other members wishing to speak at this point? Okay, I'm not seeing that. So Nicola, can I ask you to sum up?
Thank you, Leader, and thank you very much for the support that you've given me and your endorsement of Anthony's engagement in this. You're quite right to draw our attention to the fact that this is risky. When you start a conversation with somebody saying, please don't spare my feelings, tell me what you really think, it is no surprise that they don't spare your feelings and tell you what they really think. But this is exactly what we needed to do. We had to be open, we had to invite those conversations and sit back and hear what the lived experience is. And it's only when you're open to that sort of, to hearing the picture and to understanding people's lived experience that you can start to bring what it is that we have to offer. It is partnership going forward. It will take time. We may have some hurdles along the way, but we have started the conversation, I hope, in the right way. And I am absolutely up for taking this forward. And I must also thank Children's Services Overview and Scrutiny. They've not been able to see the picture, see the report and the paper just as it is ahead of the meeting, but it was really important that it came to Cabinet today, and they will be crucial in helping us develop the business cases and also keeping an eye on how those recommendations are being taken forward. I hope I formally moved the recommendations, but if I haven't done so, let me confirm that I have. Thank you.
Fantastic. Okay, thank you. So we've got the recommendations as put. All those in favour, please show. And that's again unanimous, which is encouraging. Thank you. Okay, then that moves us back in the agenda to agenda item 12, which is a Children's Services Capital Programme. Councillor Nicola Green.
Thank you, Leader, and I hope this now sits in the context of what our vision is for education. This looks at the capital programme so far, and this, I think, is the first time that Cabinet and members more generally will have seen the picture as it's been drawn across from the previous local authorities. It shows the projects that have been delivered so far, but particularly it sets out our intentions going forwards, clearly referencing the previous two papers. So our current real focus is on providing places for children with special educational needs and disabilities to align with the ongoing written statement of action and the appreciative inquiry. The administration made an early commitment to invest in that as a priority by allocating that £10 million we've referred to in this year's budget. And further work is underway to ensure that the analysis of the needs of our current cohort inform that spend. It's very easy to spend money on school buildings. It's less easy to demonstrate that we are actually making sure that we're investing in the right children. And I must thank everybody who's involved in the work which is going on behind this, because it's a huge piece of work. The paper obviously sets out where we receive our funding from, as well as the additional allocation that's come through the council's own resources, and it sets out the broad parameters during which within which we make our investments and the assessments. In terms of the recommendations, I do want, if I may, to draw attention to recommendations 2 and 3 relating to a pausing of the Winchelsea satellite scheme at Summerford Primary. The original decision came before the visit of Ofsted in the early summer of this year, and indeed before the findings of the appreciative inquiry, and therefore it's appropriate to ensure that we optimise that resource in the light of the consequent work, and make sure that we're absolutely investing in a robust and appropriate way. And recommendation 3 is the financial requirement which follows on. And I have to say, I would like to say how grateful I am to both the schools and their governors for their patience while we come up with the very best solution that we can for both those schools. So that covers, I hope, all 3 recommendations, and I seek a seconder. Thank you.
Yeah, very happy to personally second that and thank the sort of work that's gone into it. I won't go into too much detail, but just reiterating the point that, how we are as administration, absolutely ready to play our part, and hopefully we've displayed that through £10 million, and we'll look to look at any other innovative ways of supporting this sector and the work here. Okay, do we have any members wishing to speak on this item? Okay, I'm not seeing that. So, oh, sorry, I do have one. Apologies, Councillor Mike White.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I mean, I'm really pleased to see completion of the new school building for the Hillbourne Primary School. I mean, this is a project which has been under consideration for a long time. Ward members have been campaigning for this for 10 years or possibly even more. And I first got involved in this some 5 years ago as the lead member for Children's Services for Poole. I mean, it is a multi-million-pound project. The new building also provides a 35-place preschool, and further work will be ongoing on the site, and surplus land will also be released for housing. So it's a fantastic project all round, providing a new school and much needed housing in the area. It's absolutely great news. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that, Mike, and echo that sentiment. Okay, any other members wishing to speak? I see not. Councillor Spear, would you like to sum up? Yes,
thank you. And I'd just like to thank Councillor White for his for drawing attention to Hillbourne. Councillors White and Green have been on the school investment scheme for quite some years, and I was delighted to finish off what Councillor White started in his days in Poole by being part of the handover of the keys for Hillbourne School just last week. And I think it is appropriate to mention actually the transformative power an investment in school for a community. That nursery is looking, the preschool is looking fantastic. The buildings are great. The children could not be more excited about moving into their schools. It's a fantastic resource, and it's what that community deserves. So this is why we do schools capital investment, and this is why we think very carefully before we spend the money. But we see, don't we, when we walk in through the doors of any school, just what a difference it makes. Thank you.
Absolutely, and with that, I'll very happily recommend just take us to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. That is unanimous. Okay, let's move on now to agenda item 14, won't it? Which is the Adult Social Care Commissioning Strategies, and I'll look to Councillor Karen Rampton to move.
Yes, thank you, Chair. These are the updated version of the two commissioning strategies: care homes for older people and extra care housing strategies. You've seen these before. They were approved at Cabinet on the 1st of September, and I mentioned at that meeting that more accessible versions would be coming forward to Cabinet for final approval. So there are no substantial changes to either strategy other than the graphics and the pictures. However, I'm not going to miss this opportunity to remind members of some of the highlights in the strategies. So firstly, the care homes for older people. And the paper sets out the approach and intentions of BCP Council and also its CCG in commissioning care home placements for older people. We have a high number of older people in BCP, and that's expected to increase by 20% by 2040. So we've got a higher proportion than the national average of people going into care homes, and a significant number of older people who do need long-term support. And actually putting people increased numbers into care homes is just unsustainable. So we've already produced an adult social care strategy, and one of our measures of success is reducing the numbers of admissions into care home. That, of course, doesn't mean at all that they won't need or receive care and support as necessary. But we want people to live long, independent lives and have services which are modern and accessible and delivered in a very person-centred way. So this strategy talks of reviewing commissioning, including the fee structures, which are an issue, particularly so because of the COVID repercussions, supporting care homes to maintain their workforce and to encourage recruitment into the care sector. And care should really be seen as a great career choice. And I'll just, if I may, Chair, just take this opportunity to plug the Proud to Care Awards, which is currently out for people to nominate carers, whether informal or paid carers, and the closing date is the 10th of November. So the second paper is my extra care housing strategy. And if our plan is to reduce the number of individuals going into residential care, we need viable alternatives. Extra care is one of those. Putting care and housing together can meet the needs of a range of ages and abilities. People can have their own front door, so maintaining their independence, but with that care and support when needed and in a community setting. And we're going to need around 1,500 extra care units by 2040. So we've got a way to go because we haven't got that many at the moment. Work is now happening to identify suitable sites where we can build extra care village or villages to help meet our housing requirements, to integrate people in suitable settings, to create those homes for life with mixed tenures and mixed ages and mixed abilities. And we want to create tech-enabled new build, and we want to take advantage of that progression in care technology, which will support people's independence. And we want to do all this, we want to co-produce with our users of services, our carers, and our other stakeholders. So to sum up, I'm asking Cabinet to approve these two updated versions, and I will use the word, they're zhuzhed up. And apparently, and I looked this up actually, zhuzh is spelled Z-H-U-Z-H. Who knew that? So I will carry on using that because I think it's a fabulous word. They're zhuzhed up. I think they're really interesting and informative and colourful and really readable. So I would urge everybody listening to have a good old read, and I'm asking Cabinet today to support the strategies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, for Karen, for that explanation. Before I bring in Councillor Green to second, I think you're right. To my extra care strategy, I think you are leading on it, so very much is yours. But very happy that our administration is also behind it as well. Thank you, Councillor Green. Nicola.
Thank you, Leader. I'm not sure I can. I won't even try and pronounce where Councillor Rampton has gone, but I must admire her ability to bring good news twice to Cabinet by bringing an updated document. And what a document! It's so much more readable. It's accessible. It tells us what we want people to understand. There is no point us writing a dry document. It has to be readable, and it has to mean something. So, Karen, thank you for your patience and your determination that we should get to that. And I'm very, very pleased to second your recommendations.
Thank you very much. Okay, great. So, with that, any other members wishing to speak on this item? I don't see that. So happy to come back to Councillor Rampton to sum up, and then we'll go to vote.
Nothing more to add apart from to thank Councillor Green for her comments. Thank you, Chair. Great.
Okay. Recommendations as per. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. That is unanimous. Okay, so let's move forward to agenda item 15, which is urgent decisions taken by the Chief Exec in accordance with the Constitution, which I believe there are none, and I'm confirmed there are none, which is helpful. Agenda item 16, we've got the Cabinet Forward Plan. We've had the latest version of the Forward Plan was published yesterday. Any members wishing to speak, please show. Okay. Oh, okay. Councillor Mike Green.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Leader. One of the items that's down there as a draft date at the moment is for the update on the climate action plan, which is planned for the December Cabinet. As we discussed earlier, within the medium-term financial plan, we have made a very significant change to the budget for climate action, and that has allowed us for the first time to be able to put into place an entire team to really revolutionise the work that we're doing on this. As you know, when we took over the administration from the previous Liberal Democrat led one, we were in a shocking position of having virtually no resources whatsoever for climate action that was meant to be a priority of the council. This has now changed. We expect that the new head of the department, which should be up to 11 strong, will be appointed in about 3 weeks' time, and will take up his position in about 3 weeks' time. And I think that it would make far more sense, given that the acceleration in work that is going on at the moment, that we delay that by a cycle. And so I will ask for that at this point, or announce at this point that we hope to bring that instead to the following cabinet, and therefore into the following council as well.
Thank you very much for that, and that sounds a really good approach. Effectively, the scale of what work is now starting to ramp up. In that area, it certainly makes sense to do that one cycle later. Fantastic. Okay, any other comments on the forward plan? I see none, so I will move forward to agenda item 17, which is an urgent item titled the acceptance and allocation of a household support fund. And I believe some good news there, and I come to Councillor Nicola Green to move that forward.
Thank you, Leader. And I think the first part of this report title shouldn't trouble us much. I think we probably shouldn't disagree over whether or not we will accept 2.65 million from the government. But it's really important how carefully we consider how we're going to spend that. This paper has come as a late one, but that is due really to the time it has taken and the date at which we were allocated that support by government. So it's not come through. Apologies to the chairman, but I believe he's been consulted as to why it wasn't available for overview and scrutiny, and would be very happy to expand on it here. It is really timely. This is part of our winter resilience plan. It's a very significant part of our winter resilience plan. It will enable some of our residents to plan through to next spring. Last winter, members may remember that we received significant funding from government to assist some of the need that we had, but frankly it came in a rather piecemeal way. This funding allocation that we've received goes through to next spring and allows both our partner organisations and our families crucially to plan ahead. Our proposed model of spend replicates the arrangement in place last year, which worked so well. Schools who are absolutely at the front line of identifying families in need will be leading again, although the allocation of vouchers that they can make is significantly increased from what was available last year, and that's been a local choice to push the money via schools in that way. It's not solely on the basis of families identified as being eligible for free school meals, because we know that schools are that close to their families that there will be some people who don't claim, but certainly have need. Children's centres and other agencies also reach out to families of preschool children, so those who would not have gone through the process of applying for their free school meal eligibility, and it's equally important that families with very young children have access to this. Citizens Advice, our local agency, reaches another group of people who present in need, often experiencing difficulties through food and fuel poverty. And likewise, Dorset Community Foundation reach elsewhere through their grant giving structure. They're a very well established local organisation. I'm very grateful to both of them for their work with us over the past year to make sure that we reach where we need to. The Access to Food Partnership, which was set up probably a couple of years ago, is very well established locally, and it harnesses that wonderful community response, and I'm grateful to all members of the council who've contributed one way or another to their local food response, but particularly to volunteers and people within our community who make donations. So it's important to recognise that this is not just something that is passported through from government to those local arrangements. It really is a community and resident-led approach. But there's £60,000 here contained to support the activities such as food banks, community fridges and pantries and so on. And as before, we will ensure that robust and ongoing monitoring is in place to ensure that we are reaching those in need. There's an acceptance, I think, that we need to invest in spreading our message, and there is an allowance in here for a comms strategy, but I would like to take the opportunity today, not only for me to say this, but to encourage everybody else to, that this money isn't there for somebody else. You or somebody you know, if you or somebody you know or a group that you know qualifies for this funding, please apply. It is not a heavy bureaucratic process, and it's intended to be spent in our communities. We will not be aiming to send any money back to government. We have the need locally, and we really want it to reach the people who most need it. The clocks go back this weekend. The dark evenings will be with us soon. And across this administration and around the whole of the council, we're planning to make our services resilient this winter, and to ensure that this £2.6 million is targeted to funding to those who really, really need it. And frankly, this is a significant and important way to kick off that winter resilience. Thank you, Leader.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, and I'm happy to second the paper. It's really good news from government, effectively, that we've been able to show again that really targeted investment, and £2.6 million for our area will be absolutely well received. You highlighted it, and the report does too. And what I really like about this is the way in which this is being deployed, through partners, effectively a range of different partners, whether that be food banks, whether that be Dorset Community Foundation. That's how we should be working. There's parts of we can stand up and we're the right people to access the community, and there's some parts where it's other parts of the community. We're doing some really interesting work. led by Councillor Jane Kelly around a whole asset-based community development piece, and we need to be passporting resources to community to affect positive change and supporting the communities that they're doing. So particularly delighted about the money able to go to support the work we're building on from last year with Dorset Community Foundation. I think I was had the opportunity to praise their work when I was on Politics South last Sunday. And they've done some fantastic work, and we've in our budget as well put £50,000 last year in, and that in the Living Legacy Funds, which has been great. So it's just seeing how these community groups can actually then really move the needle. It's been hugely encouraging. We look to do more of it. Okay, now I look to other councillors to come in and make comment here, and I have Councillor Bobby Duff.
Good morning, and I'd like Leader and also Councillor Green for bringing this paper to Cabinet today. I particularly really wanted to mention Councillor Green's considered and thoughtful approach as to how we can best support our vulnerable people and families over the winter that's coming up, but also the considered response and how we work with our partner agencies and charities. I think the paper really shows and demonstrates that people are at the centre of everything that we do, and that their well-being is of utmost importance to us. And we've heard this throughout many papers today. It's all about really the well-being and our skills that we're bringing to people, so that we empower them to and support them in helping themselves. And so therefore it's really extremely reassuring to hear that the plans are in place to support the residents as we go forward. I think what's encouraging in particular is the fact that the paper goes a bit further than the amazing campaign that was started by Marcus Rashford a year ago. The paper isn't just about free school meal replacements over the holiday periods. It's far wider and it reaches more people. And it's about that support and that help for our most vulnerable. And it isn't just about food. It's about warmth, winter fuel, household bills, all the things that people will be worried about. And it's nice to have that reassurance at the start of the winter, so that they can make these plans as we go forward into the colder months. We really don't want people struggling this winter. And so that's why I'm really pleased that this paper isn't just about plugging those holes. It's about thought through actions to provide the help where it's absolutely needed. And like many, I'm sure, will all be reassured that there's funding to bring about these improvements to our residents, but also long-term improvements as we empower people and provide the white goods, for example, and the skills to move forward. So thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely right, Councillor Duffy. The now and the future. That's it. Absolutely what we're hoping to deliver. Okay, so I've got Councillor Broadhead. Phil.
Thank you very much, Jarrah. I share the enthusiasm for this. Councillor Green talked about the fact that dark evenings are coming, but of course when they come, we turn the lights on, and I think that's what this is doing. We're turning the lights on onto our winter resilience plan. There's a whole host of things that we're going to be doing to protect our most vulnerable over the course of this winter, because as we know, with the pandemic and other factors, it might be a challenging winter for some. And so what does that mean? It means that we step up and provide the support. And what this in particular means on the ground, it means that we're doubling the financial support for some of our most vulnerable across the BCP area, doubling the financial support this winter, which I think is a really strong message, so that we've not only got our arms around people, but also we have a plan to protect our most vulnerable in our society. And I look forward to all of the rest of the ways that we're going to be announcing in the next few weeks of all of the other parts of our winter resilience plan to make sure that, across the board, whether it be council services, protecting our most vulnerable, making sure that roads are gritted, that we're stepping up and acting to make sure that we've got it all in hand. Thank you, Chair.
Absolutely, here. Okay, so I don't see any other members showing. So the recommendations as put, I'll ask all those in favour to please show. That's great, and again unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, that now I believe moves us to the end of our agenda. Really packed agenda. Hopefully showing some real ambition for our area and putting people at the heart of it again. Can I thank anybody who's watched live or who's caught up with this? Thank you for the colleague support, and particularly thank you to Councillor Bartlett and the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, who put a lot of effort into a lot of these papers today as well. Okay, thank you everybody, and I'm pleased to close the meeting.